Hello, so today I'm going to be doing an unscripted video, so bear with me. I do have some kind of rough notes, but we'll see if I can keep my head screwed on, so thank you for bearing with me. I'm going to be talking about Charli XCX's next album rollout for music fashion film, due to be released July 24th. I'm going to be talking about how it kind of compares to Brat, since it was such a massive cultural moment for the music industry, along with what songs have been released so far and what kind of is interesting about them and the themes that she seems to be exploring so far. So on the surface, I would say that Brat and music fashion film show pretty stark differences, especially with their album covers. We've got Brat with its neon green and Arial font that looks quite low budget, low effort, very nonchalant, in comparison to music fashion film, which looks much more high budget and a lot more, on the surface at least, serious, featuring John Cale from the Velvet Underground, Marc Jacobs, the fashion designer, and Martin Scorsese, who directed Taxi Driver and The Wolf of Wall Street, are two famous films by him. And I found it interesting how people have taken this album cover, because I think a lot of immediate reactions are either, wow, this is amazing that they managed to get these three people in the same room together because they are such high status and influential figures.
The three horsemen of the music fashion filmocalypse here. But still, very impressive that you would get these three guys in a room for a bunch of photos.
And then there are some people who don't get the references and so are confused and see them as just three random men. I personally didn't recognize any of them, and only having them explained to me who that they are, do I get oh yeah, they're famous Velvet Underground or Marc Jacobs, yeah, fine. But I do find it interesting because that seems to be quite a prominent theme of this new album, is the theme of referencing massive moments of pop culture and referencing art and music itself. And I do find that an interesting thing, because I think a lot of the time when people reference massive moments of pop culture, especially what is taken as kind of high art and high culture, that can kind of be used to build someone's identity, in terms of if you say that you listen to certain bands and artists, you might be taken more seriously if it's from, I don't know, some kind of indie rock genre or something like that, or if it's a little bit more underground or niche. But I don't think that Charli is doing that. I don't think that she is trying to use these characters as a form of legitimization for her art. To me, I see it as more of a commentary of given the fact that she references art itself, which I'll discuss more in the songs themselves. Given the fact that she does that, I feel like her references seem more a observation or a commentary, rather than a specific oh, I've used these really high status figures, therefore my music is more high art. So I read a Harper's Bazaar article about this new album rollout, and it really took a stance of Charli using these figures to culturally educate her audience, which I think is quite interesting, because why do you need to know these figures specifically to be culturally educated? Who gets to pick what is high art and what is low art? And to me, I think they've kind of missed the mark on that one, because I feel like Charli is still playing with the whole high art, low art thing. In fact, given the fact that she literally released Brat and embraced sort of colloquially low art culture, and having that very ugly, disgusting neon green, which I love. That's not a slight against her. Given the fact that she so openly embraced that, I don't think that her now going for a more serious looking album cover is her turning against low culture. I think that it kind of shows that she's willing to embrace either or in kind of a quite like postmodern way. I don't think that she's just referencing for the sake of trying to appear better than low art. So that's my first main observation. Secondly, I think that there are a lot of references to art and music itself, which I will discuss in the songs. For example, the album title itself, Music, Fashion, Film, is very much like it literally is referencing these different art forms. It is music about music and other art. And as well, there are very overt references to rock music, but there's still her kind of iconic, like electronic manipulation, which I think kind of then acts as a commentary on rock music rather than deliberately trying to fit neatly into the rock music genre. And finally, I think that music, fashion, film is still quite brat adjacent because it still shows very overt levels of sarcasm and plain lyricism between the two albums, at least with the songs that we've got out so far. To me, I would say that this album so far seems like it's coming at things from a high art perspective, but it's not just like critiquing low art. I think it's playing with the two, and I think that the albums might end up going quite nicely hand in hand together. So yeah, but I'm going to talk about the songs now from the ones that have been released. So one of the most notable things about the songs that she's released so far is that they're very short, like about 2 minutes long each.
And was that intentional? Was that something?
No. I wasn't like, oh, I must make a album with tiny songs. It just...
And there's been some discourse over it in that people might think that there's not enough time to, develop things. But I think it's quite interesting if you look at the song forms themselves, because you can see areas where choruses and pre-choruses and things act a bit more unconventionally and either don't have a very short amount of time to grow or are cut out altogether and so on. So I'm going to talk about the song Rock Music first. I think its chorus is its most interesting part that I want to focus on. For its chorus, it's only 2 bars long initially, and it's just made up of the 2 words rock music. Or I guess we're making rock music. It leads, the sort of pre-chorus section leads into the chorus.
So now we're making rock music.
And then after those 2 bars, it leads back into a 4-bar thing that preempts the next verse. And it feels very immediate to me, and it feels like things aren't being allowed to conventionally build into a massive climax like would be in a lot of rock music. And then the second chorus lasts 4 bars, and that's because her lyric of the word rock is glitched and sampled and chopped and repeated for the full 4 bars.
So now we're making rock music.
She's taking these very overt rock characteristics of the electric guitars and the hard-hitting drums, and she's adding in electronic characteristics of repeated samples and kind of glitchy aspects as well. And it almost feels like she's taking this rock material and melody and instrumentation and then putting it through an electronic kind of filter, which kind of then serves again as a commentary to me. The fact that it's called rock music in the first place to me reads as, again, a commentary of rock music rather than her deliberately trying to make a conventional rock song. And then finally, the outro, it ends with the lyric, "I'm really banging my head," and it feels quite finished to me. And then she leads back into the "and now we're making rock music," but it ends with a glitch of the word rock again, and it just ends.
I'm really banging my head, and now we're making rock.
to me, again, that feels very disruptive and more so like she's looking at rock music from a kind of postmodern angle and like tearing it apart and making it a bit, bringing it into our current day. So the next song I'm going to talk about is the song Wink Wink, which is her most recent release. And the whole thing is like really sarcastic, especially in the music video. And from a music theory perspective, I find it interesting that her chorus finishes with the term wink wink, whereas in a lot of song conventions, choruses would begin with the title, so it kind of feels like a musical version of like wink wink, like get what I'm picking up, especially given that the prior two lyrics are here's the truth and I gotta be honest, I'm not a bad girl anymore, I promise. Yeah, it's a very obvious like inside joke that's not very inside, I suppose. And as well, the music video really plays into this. Most notably, the first chorus opens with her masturbating to copyright and the music marketplace. So it's really playing with how she's seen as a female artist. Yeah, I just love how sarcastic it is. And yeah, I think that her mixing these kind of electronic and rock music attributes along with very sarcastic lyrics and the music videos, again, to me plays into her commenting on art and on high art and low art and what it means to be an artist from a kind of like observational perspective rather than her trying to, you know, enforce what you should be listening to or what should be. It feels a bit more far removed than that to me. So the last song that I want to talk about is Playboy Bunny. And it's from her B-sides, which is kind of like her side, like unreleased tracks that aren't going to be on the album but kind of pair with the album, which I think is a really interesting thing to do as well. To me, this is the song that most overtly mixes rock and electronic music. It's made up of basically one large chorus section that is repeated and then changed via like texture and timbre, and to me that reads as like a very electronic thing to do, despite the instrumentation being quite rock focused. So I've got two bullet points. I've got oh she's rock and I've got oh she's electronic. So in my oh she's rock section, the drum beat and guitar are very like, honestly it reminds me a lot of like Weezer. And the black and white music video and different kind of shots feels more rock adjacent to me. And then in the electronic section, she's used vocoder vocals, chopped vocals, a lot of repetition of the same melodic material. There's also kind of a blend of rock and electronic attributes in that you'll get building drums, which feels rock influenced. But you'll get kind of more textural rises in timbre, which would feel like an electronic kind of dance music thing to do. And then you've got the refrain where she repeats the lyric Playboy Bunny, which again feels very electronic.
Playboy bunny, 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 Playboy. And
again, I think all of these like electronic repetitions and timbres help to fit the lyrical narrative of this song, notably the line, "All my music sounds the same. Well, that's because I made it." It feels sarcastic. It feels like she's commenting as an artist towards people that are kind of maybe complaining about like, oh, you've changed, or oh, you you always sound the same. And I think that this is quite fitting for this album Rollout as well, because inevitably she's going to get people who are comparing this album to her previous one and saying that it doesn't quite meet the mark because, you know, either it's Brat Part 2 and it's unoriginal, or it's completely different and she's been changed by her fame. So I think it is quite fitting actually that she's managed to kind of take a pivot from Brat, but she's still reacting to that album by taking this kind of sarcastic and observational take and still maintaining some electronic characteristics that feel very much within her domain. But I'm looking forward to see what she puts out in the future. And I think she's taken a really interesting angle because I think she's still maintained some of her main characteristics of electronic music whilst taking quite a prominent shift into more kind of rock characteristics. And I like that she's playing with high and low art as well in terms of making these references to art and quite big figures within music, fashion and film. But she's still being sarcastic and funny and kitschy, and I like that she's able to balance exploring both of these domains. I think that's a good thing to do because I think that there can be a lot of snobbery if you are gatekeeping either end. So I'm looking forward to it, but let me know your thoughts. Obviously, this sort of topic is very subjective, but I do think that you can take some interesting points away from it, hopefully. So yeah, thanks for watching.